Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
How's everybody doing out there? I see my team in the back, fellas. We got our staff, faculty, administration. Love to see everybody here. My name is Jeffrey DeSuze. I am the assistant director, one of the assistant directors of campus life here at New Jersey City University. And we are bringing back, last semester we took a semester off, but we're back this semester with our installment of Inside the Faculty Studio. And this time around I decided to reach out to a colleague that's always been open to working with the students, that's always been very vocal about the programming and doing some great programming herself. So from our English department, we have Dr. Sonya Donaldson as part of our first spring semester inside the faculty studio. So if we give our Dr. Donaldson a round of applause, give it up, give it up. There we go. So can I call you Sonya?
Sure.
All right, Sonya. First and foremost, I have to
Socks.
respects to the sock game. And I must say that I am happy and proud that you wore some dope socks today.
Thank you.
So for those of you that may not know, what we're going to do with this program, how this program works is we have a series of questions that we're going to ask Dr. Donaldson. And then we're also going to open it up to the audience. So if at any time you have any questions, please let us know. Also, we'll be giving away some prizes a little bit later. But to win a prize, all you have to do is go on Twitter and go to our Twitter account and tweet to NJCU Campus Life. Tweet a question that you may have for Dr. Donaldson that you want me to ask. So if you tweet a question out, all you have to do is tweet it at NJCU Campus Life. And we'll respond and get your questions.
Twitter, huh?
I know. We still use it. We still use it.
Oh,
we will not be accepting any Snapchat questions. Just wanted to let you know that.
We will not be checking Yik Yak.
They will not. Oh, certainly not Yik Yak at all. So, Doc, are you ready for these questions?
Well, no, but go ahead.
All right, we're gonna start anyways.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Okay, so so we're gonna ask you a series question that we ask pretty much everybody. This is how we start. So I'm gonna start with starting from the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Kingston, Jamaica.
Kingston, Jamaica.
Yep,
Shout out.
city girl.
Can you tell us a little bit about Kingston? What some memories that you have, if any, about your time there?
Lots of memories. I mean, it's a city, and it's a great city. I went to elementary school there, and had a great life, a great sense of community, and sort of ease of movement. So I actually spent a lot of time in the country visiting my grandmother, and so those are actually my best memories of Jamaica, is being packed up at the end of the school term, and when you arrived home, actually your things were already packed up, and so it was just sort of like off you go to the country for the summer. And so those are actually some of my best memories. So even though I'm a city person, I also have a great affinity for the country. So
I grew up in the city as well, mm-hmm. And my parents, same thing, during the summertime, we had family that lived deep in Long Island in New York, and they would just send us, go play in the grass,
yes.
Go figure out,
Exactly.
Go breathe some air.
Exactly.
Can you go breathe some clean air?
Clean air, yeah, non-city air, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about one memory you might have about your time in the country away from your city time in Kingston?
Yeah, actually my favorite memory, and it's become kind of like a life lesson, but when I would first get to the country, my grandmother would give me a seed to plant. And so she would take us out and we would plant, and sort of for the entirety of the time we were there, we would cultivate that seed, take care of it, water it. And at the end of the summer before we left, what grew from it became part of the meal. And so that's actually my fondest memory, is having that sense of process and growth, and also what it takes to sort of build and sort of grow something, right? So it's kind of informed how I teach and how I treat my students. And so it is my sort of best and favorite memory, just being a little girl and being given a seed to plant, and caring for that.
So you were in there digging and
digging in the dirt.
That's
Yes.
it. Oh,
yeah.
man,
We
that's-
went barefoot and everything.
Out there.
Out in the wilds. Yeah.
How many of you went? Do you remember? Was it
There
cousins,
were two of
brothers?
us, but when we got to the country, there were lots of cousins and people who were not cousins, but were just sort of like, we're going to live with, my grandmother had kind of a really open home. Well, the family had a compound, really, and everyone had homes on the compound. And so people would send their kids to my grandmother if they, got overwhelmed or couldn't take care of them for a while, and she would always take kids in. So we always had cousins, but also people who claimed to be cousins. So even to this day, so people I thought were cousins, being an adult and being told, no, that's not your real cousin. That's just cousin so-and-so. And you're like, but cousin, no, not your blood, just your cousin.
Let's play cousin.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. So, that kind of environment is one of the things I really appreciate.
That's awesome. Now, you said you spent elementary school in Kingston.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to high school there? Did you go to high school out here in the
No,
States?
I came to the U.S. when I was 11.
Okay.
Yeah, and I grew up I grew up in Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles, but spent time in New York City a lot, going back and forth with my parents. So, yeah, so I was on a plane a lot. So I spent, lots of holidays and my summers in New York. And then, spent the school year in Southern California. So, yeah.
So would you consider yourself an LA person, a New York person?
New York.
You're a New York.
I'm a New York
You will not.
person.
You're not going to grab LA by the horns quite yet. No. All right. Well, shout out to our West Coast viewers out there.
Yes, West Coast. It's the most.
Yes.
No, just kidding. No, there are great things about Los Angeles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking of some. No.
Yep.
No, I love the beach. Right. And actually, one of my favorite things is just to drive up the coast of Malibu when I do go home and just stop somewhere. So yeah, no, I have fond memories. We would, camp out on the beach, went hiking. So there's lots of great memories
Yeah,
of LA,
absolutely.
but New York's my place.
That's it.
Yeah.
New York City. Shout out any New Yorkers out there?
Brooklyn,
I see y'all. Right. What was your favorite subject growing up?
English.
English. Woo woo. I was an English major too, so I'm all for
Yes, English.
those who loved English.
Yeah.
Was there like an English teacher or something that kind of led you to being, or you just it was just love at first sight?
Yeah,
at first read.
I liked literature, and we just always had books, and we always read. Everyone in the house read, so there was never a kind of like having to, having someone sort of instill, something externally. It was just a normal part of growing up. You just had books, and everybody read.
That's it.
Yeah.
Automatic.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask this next question. Where did you go to college?
I went to Brooklyn College for undergrad and the University of Virginia for grad school. So,
What did you love most about your college experience?
Brooklyn.
Let's start with Brooklyn.
I love Brooklyn, but I was really, really fortunate. I was an adult learner going back to school and got to be part of a really wonderful community at Brooklyn College, and then got invited to the Honors Academy, and so we created this really great community of people who were interested in scholarship and also teaching and learning. And so that was one of the great things, just being in that space or having a space created for us where we would build community but also be educating each other. It was really important.
Now, so you lived in Brooklyn while you were going to Brooklyn College, or?
No, I lived in the Bronx while I was going to
Bronx.
Brooklyn College. Yeah,
That's a commute and a half.
It took 2 hours on the weekend.
Oh man.
Yeah, each way.
Whew.
And I was working full time, so so I would do sort of one class in the week and then 2 classes on the weekend sometimes. So at the time, 12 was a full course load.
Man, it's
Yeah.
a big deal.
Yeah.
What did you love most about grad school? So you went to UVA. So after Brooklyn College,
Yeah.
finished with Brooklyn, and then you went down south,
Went down south.
below the Mason-Dixon, to the University of Virginia.
Yes.
What
Thomas Jefferson's University.
Right. Yeah, that's right. What did you love most about UVA?
Oh,
It's a huge school.
it's a huge school. What do I love most about UVA? Again, there was the opportunity to create community, right? There were black graduate students, black undergraduate students, not a lot of black faculty. And even among our groups, we were pretty small numbers, but there was just this sense of creating a strong community, right? So we could be in touch with each other, creating sort of practices that we followed. We had sort of one of the practices, actually, a friend of mine came down a couple of years after we did, and she started calling everyone doctor. And we were grad students, but we picked up this habit because it was sort of like aspirational, right? And it was a way of keeping us accountable to each other when someone didn't do a paper or maybe got an incomplete. It was like, doctor, you know? So it created the space for us to motivate each other and to help each other do well. You know, when I was taking my, studying for my orals exam, I remember being up, and at the time I was staying with a friend, and I was in my room reading, and I would see him walk by, and he'd say, it's 10 o'clock, it's time for you to get a good night's sleep. And so things like that, where we really looked out for each other and created both, spaces of support, but also spaces where you could grow intellectually. And that's really important.
What was a big difference? This question's off the record, off the books here. Virginia and Brooklyn, right? Two different spaces, some similarities though, nonetheless. But what was the two things that you saw that were like different between Virginia and New York City?
It was clean. Charlottesville is clean. Simple things that, like, when you step into the crosswalk, cars stop. Just really simple things, and people will say, go ahead. No honking of car horns. And so when my sister came to visit me, that's one of the things that was shocking to her, as we're driving, and she's like, the guy was, the light was green and he didn't move for 3 seconds and no one honked. And I was like, yeah.
That's how it is.
Yeah, that's how it is. So the pace is different. What things are sort of important to people is also different. There's definitely a sense. Charlottesville is what they call a blue pocket in a red state at the time, and Charlottesville is so very, it's a bit different in that regard. So outside of the sort of community of Charlottesville, you still encountered the things that we all encounter every day. Whether it's racial profiling or, people sort of being reluctant to engage you, all of those things. I didn't find, worse racism in the South than I did in New York City. I found different, or sort of articulated differently. But that was it.
So in grad school, what was your specialty in graduate school? So was English lit again?
Is English lit. I actually specialize in World Anglophone Lit post 1945. So the Anglophone world after the war.
So you knew little inside, little English humor there.
All of it.
So from that, right? So going from UVA, studying all of the Anglophone work after 1945, every aspect of it.
No. And with a focus on African diasporic literature.
Boop, boop. All right. So did you know from the beginning that as you were going through that graduate process, that the next step was faculty member somewhere? So you knew from a time that from the beginning of grad school.
Yes. Yes.
I was going to be an English professor somewhere.
Yes, that's why I went back to grad school, because otherwise people threatened me. They're like, you better do this or else. No. Yes, I knew. Jeff's like, are you serious?
I'm like, wait, I don't know. Were there threats?
Yes,
Do we need to address these threats?
We need to take the threat seriously. No, it was pretty much, and it was something that I wanted. That's actually why I, made the decision. But I was definitely encouraged by mentors to do it, so that no one goes looking for my mentors.
Right. Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
We will not.
Don't-
We have
don't.
taken it off. We will eliminate all
Yeah.
threat watch.
Don't
Is now
come
done.
for them.
So you knew that. So now you've been teaching. You've taught at other institutions.
Yes.
So how did you end up here at New Jersey City University?
So this is that's a big question.
Is it?
Yeah, it is a big question.
You want me to strike it from the record?
No, don't strike it from the record. It's not record striking worthy. But no, I knew that I wanted to teach particular groups of people, and I knew. So that I knew. So I actually did a 1-year visiting at Hampshire College, and most of the students who were in my classes were students of African American or African diasporic, including Latino students. So most of the students that I taught at Hampshire were of the population that I desired to teach. And I was looking for to be in an institution that sort of reflected the makeup of the people I wanted to teach. And I did a campus visit, and one of the things that really struck me on this visit was that I heard students' voices, and they were happy. Like I heard happy voices, and I just thought, that sounds really nice. It sounds like a place that I want. I hear students, sort of having conversations and interacting with each other, and the jokes, and I started looking around pretty closely and saw that there were these spaces of community that students had developed or were developing, and I thought, well, that's really that's a good sign. So there were all these good signs about NJCU, and that it reminded me a lot of Brooklyn College in many ways, in terms of these communities that were being created. And even I go upstairs to the second floor and I see students that have been in my classes, and it's just sort of like, it's a good thing to see students being in community. So I was looking for that. I was looking for student population.
Yeah. And you take advantage of that. I mean, I know that I often see you here, and your ability to bridge the gap of literature, which is one of the oldest pop cultural genres of all time, with hip hop, which is a more fairly recent pop cultural phenomenon in time today. Can you tell us about that class, like the title of that class, and some of the ways that you were able to just tell us a little bit about that class in general?
So the class is called Reading Hip Hop, and deliberately so, because it is about reading hip hop. And I think students are finding, where I have a student around here somewhere, I think students are finding that it is difficult. Because it's literature and it's an art, and so I never really approached it as sort of bridging a gap between literature and music, because I've always seen it as literature. I've always seen it as poetry, right? I've seen the metaphors and the art that go into making this music, and so I don't, I think of it as poetry that's set to beats, and sort of have a particular rhythm and different performance styles depending on the artist. So that was the first thing for me, was that I didn't see it. I always saw it as literature. Right. So when people say things to me like they use hip hop to teach poetry, I find it a little odd, because for me hip hop is poetry. Right.
It's
so
poetic itself.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So I gotta ask, what is one hip hop artist that's in your class that's part of the curriculum, part of the syllabus that I may have to go pick up an album after or download it on Spotify. If it's not on Spotify, I mean, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, there are a couple that we're going to be looking at later. So I really like Manifest. He's awesome. He's
Do y'all know who Manifest is?
He's a Ghanaian rapper. He's amazing. Like talking about literature and the art of it. I also like Kanan. He's a Somali rapper and Somali poet, griot. So I really like his work a lot. I love Bahamadia. I love Bahamadia. Three the Hard Way is just a classic. But students have been, looking at True Honey Buns and the sexual politics involved and the kind of, sort of respectability or behavioral politics that I think are really, really interesting. And we've been looking at, reading Lupe Fiasco really closely.
Awesome.
So we start out with the difficult stuff. Today we read Bombs Over Baghdad, Outcast, and again, it was really, really difficult because one of the things that we talked about today was definitely needing a hip-hop history course at the institution, because reading hip-hop can do so much. So it can provide you with a cultural context and some historical context based on the literature that we're exploring, but it can't do all the work, right? And students actually need that historical grounding. They need a kind of methodology of studying the development of hip-hop. And so that's actually one of the things that we talked about was a history course that really takes it up seriously as an object of study from the perspective of history. So we can do it from the literary perspective in many different ways. We can talk about composition, we can talk about form, we can talk about metaphor, we can talk about rhyme. One of the things that we started out pretty early discussing was, sort of rhyme scheme and the different forms of rhyme. And how that affects sort of the movement of the text, for example. But I think students are expressing the fact that they need a historical grounding because there's so much that they don't understand or that they miss, and they want to have that knowledge. So Bombs Over Baghdad requires a lot of historical knowledge, right? So it requires you to know about Clinton and Bush policies in the 1990s with regard to Iraq, what was going on at the time, what led up to Gulf War II, who Colin Powell was, all of those things that you kind of have to know. And so it requires placing those texts in a historical context for students to understand why is the group called Outcast, why is Big Boy with an I, all of those things, right?
Some gems were just dropped. I just want to just throw it out there. Some serious gems you just dropped there. The Bombs Over Baghdad, one of my favorite records by Outkast in general. I think that's another thing too. I think it's very important that you bring up that historical context. Like hip hop didn't start with Drake, didn't start with Jay-Z, didn't start with Biggie and Jay-Z, Tupac's death. You know what I mean? Like there's so much richness that's related to the political context, socioeconomic context. I mean, so much about it. So I'm gonna shift the conversation a little bit. We're gonna ask a couple of personal questions here. I don't know if you're prepared for this. Just giving you the heads up now.
Okay.
All right. So now you talked about. You ready? Are you ready? You dropped. You ready? You plead the fifth. You just plead the. Plead the fifth. There's no fifth pleading going on here today.
Well, then I'll take a fifth.
Well, listen. Camera.
See?
So you talked about it. You talked about growing up and spending time in Kingston, Jamaica, and every year the Office of Campus Life has an event called Who's Caribbean, and what does that mean to you? Can you talk a little bit about how your Caribbean heritage had any type of bearing on, which of course it did, had a bearing on the person that you are today as a scholar, as a person, your personality, anything along those lines?
I probably should not say this, and I'm gonna probably be in a lot of trouble. But there is a kind of it's not a myth, right? There's a kind of way in which Jamaicans are sort of known in the world, whether it's, you know, through music and what it's contributed to music and the culture, whether it's through sports, whether it's through art, literature. I'm thinking of Claude McKay and the Harlem Renaissance, for example.
Who wrote maybe my favorite book of all time, by the way?
Oh, which one?
To
Home to Harlem. That's one of my favorite books too. Home to Harlem. But in the contemporary, there's a kind of way in which Jamaicans are understood as confident, if not arrogant, right? We've invented everything, we've built everything, we're the best at everything, we know everything, right?
The Jamaicans are nodding, right?
That's right, you did.
They're like, I don't
Sure
see
did.
what she's
Right.
saying is wrong. It's true. We did. All right. We've contributed to, you know, a vast lexicon. The American language is richer for. So there's a way in which Jamaicans understand themselves or understood in the world. You know, it's a kind of confidence that some people call or might call arrogance. But when you are Jamaican, you understand that it is both confidence and a kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of confidence as well. And for me, that's a way of survival in a world that doesn't necessarily value the existence of black people, right? So that kind of confidence, but also understanding your reality, your lived reality, your position in the world, and how the world views you, right? I think is really important. So it's like the nodding of the, like, yeah, we invented that. You know, that's about a confidence. That's also about a kind of self-protection and ensuring that you are sort of standing strong in the world. So, yeah. So it's funny sometimes, right? And every one of us will probably can pull out a flag from somewhere close by.
Right.
So we love our flag.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just reading an article. You know, that's another thing too. Is that I think, I guess one of the stereotypical things that has been placed upon is that anytime you hear a British Caribbean accent, it's automatically they're Jamaican. So, like, I know Rihanna was just recently criticized. Somebody wrote an article talking about Rihanna's Jamaican slang made no sense or something like that. And we were like, wait a minute. First of all, it's not slang. Second of all, she's not Jamaican. Third of all, what are you talking about? Right? So, yes. I mean, I think that's a great point. You ready for our next? I'm gonna switch it up a little bit even more. So before working at NJCU and before even working as a college professor, before your full-time scholarly days, can you tell us about an interesting job that you might have worked at or had that you'd like to share with our audience?
I worked as a journalist before I went to graduate school. So I was an editor, and actually I worked for most of my grad school career full time.
You got some journalists in the house also,
as
right?
an editor. Who's a journalist? Hey. And I was the editor, technology editor of Black Enterprise magazine. So I was responsible for the technology coverage there, hardware, software. I had a test lab that I set up and ran, and did all of that before. And during graduate school, I was still working. So, yeah, not recommended. Have a full-time job while you're in graduate school.
Current interest, what's something, I'm going to put it in a broad perspective too, so we're going to leave the door completely wide open, right? What are some current interests of yours in general? What's something that keeps you, keeps your mind moving, that you're excited about?
Well, I'm, working on a digital humanities project, so I'm always looking for sort of new material and new ways of thinking about the material that I'm using, because I'm using digital materials. And so it's sort of like, how can I look at this differently, but also how can I preserve this before it disappears from the space of the internet? So I'll actually be talking a little bit more about that next month at a panel that the English department's doing. So talking a little bit about the archives and how we use the archives or understand them. So
that's great.
That's one.
I remember, it was so fascinating. I was at a presentation that Dr. Donaldson had earlier this semester. It was a semester, right? This semester, and when you talked about that video of Lift Every Voice and Sing no longer being able to be found on the internet. Like, that's one of those remarkable things that I guess I don't realize, and many of us don't realize, that sometimes things just really do disappear. Like the YouTube, the owner of the video itself, every other link to it. I think that's incredible.
And even with YouTube videos, I mean, I've been using a lot of hip hop videos in my classes, and one of the things that I discovered is that only the clean versions are now sort of available on YouTube. It's very hard to find the dirty versions or sort of the non-airplay. We're finding a lot of videos with things sort of bleeped out, or things X'd out or covered. And so I think it's a really interesting moment when we're thinking about the archives and archival practices, and sort of what's happening as these materials are shifting in the space. So there are certain things in videos that I know, right, in songs, that I can't teach because the material simply isn't there anymore. Like, it's not just profanity, it's language, and it means something in the context in which it's presented. And so when that disappears, then the context changes. So that's the other thing to contend with teaching, a course that's based on text and digital. Is that materials disappear. So
you can now it's purchasing YouTube videos and getting an app to get to your YouTube, so you can see like the organic aspect. I think that was one of the things that we loved about YouTube. It was like you can just put literally almost anything on there, and let it ride out. And now it's like getting to that space where, like you said, there's all of these restrictions. I think you, Justin, I'm thinking about it, posted a video recently, and they pulled it because of some copyright issues, perhaps, or something like that.
They took the sound off. They didn't pull the video. They just muted it.
They do that.
They just muted the sound. So I mean, so it's interesting and fascinating. So Doc, we're gonna wrap this up with a set and series of bonus questions, right? So there are about let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 or 9 questions.
Okay.
They're bonus.
All right.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Audience members, are we ready for this bonus question? Yes.
Gladiators, are you ready?
Gladiators. Now, was that a gladiator, like the show American Gladiators, Red, or was that a Scandal Gladiators? Are you ready? You said Gladiators.
Yes,
are you
I
ready?
did.
Did you go Scandal Gladiators, or was that American Gladiators, a TV show?
American Gladiators.
Is that I don't know if people. I have to stop for a moment.
Okay.
I have to stop for a moment. American Gladiators. For those of you who may not know, I have to just by a show of hands, how many of us have ever seen an episode of the American Gladiators? All right. Dun, 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 dun.
We see a millennial divide.
Yes, we really are. Contestants, are you ready? Gladiators, are you ready? The reason why this is so funny to me is the fact that so many of you don't know about American Gladiators, which is this phenomenal television program where it pinned regular athletes like ourselves against these amazing jacked men and women that had these fun events. So here's a little tidbit that Dr. Donaldson just dropped on you. If you have yet to ever see American Gladiators,
bring something very similar.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, it's good.
I want you to go to YouTube and original American Gladiators, not this new one that they kind of brought back. Original American Gladiators. I'm sorry, I was just completely thrown off by that Gladiators reference. I said, wait a minute, I have to recross my legs for this one.
Got more references.
That was fantastic. All right, bonus questions. Let's get back on track here.
All right.
All right, bonus question number 1. What is your favorite word?
Poughkeepsie.
Why is that?
It just popped into my head.
Okay, Poughkeepsie. What is your least favorite word?
Problematize.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
What sounds do you love?
Sounds do I love? Children's voices. Yeah, children's voices playing.
What was your favorite cereal growing up? This is an important question right here, this one.
Banana porridge.
Banana porridge.
That's very
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to my young Jamaican friends.
Banana porridge.
Banana
with
porridge.
condensed milk. Yeah.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
Carpenter.
Why is
Yeah.
that?
Oh, I like to build things, or at least think I can build things. No, I as a hobby many years ago, I used to kind of rescue old furniture and refinish it, and do different projects and sort of donate them to people.
Oh, so you're like legit.
Yeah.
Like, you're nice with
I
it.
I can handle a sander.
You're nice with the sander.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I built an IKEA bookcase one day,
Yeah.
and I built it in the evening.
You
and
built
then,
it?
I don't know if I built it. Does it count?
assembled it.
I put it together.
You
I assembled it.
You assembled.
All right. Well, I assembled it. Thank you, audience. I assembled it, and I went to work the next morning. Put my books all there the night before. Felt great about it. Came back from work. Books were just everywhere. Shelves. That was the last time
Yeah.
that I attempted to do any type of
Yeah.
carpentry.
Yeah.
It's not even carpentry work at all.
Yeah. No, it's not.
It's not.
It's not. It sounded like a screw was loose.
In more places than one. Next question.
Mm-hmm.
What profession do you think would be tough to do, like you wouldn't like to do?
Oh my gosh. What I would not like to do?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, probably something dirty. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
You don't want to get dirty.
No. Mm-mm. No.
Nothing like in the mud or the
No,
trash.
that was when I was like 8.
Okay, all right. You're cool in the dirt when you
Yeah.
were, but not today. No more
not
dirt.
today.
All right.
No.
Who are 3 musicians
No.
you're listening to right now?
Oh, foreign exchange.
Ah,
Really love the foreign
Amazing.
exchange. Yes, really love the foreign exchange. I'm also listening to De La Soul again, like all the old stuff.
okay.
And who else did I? Corinne Bailey Rae.
Is she still making new music?
We're waiting for a new album.
We've been waiting.
Yeah.
Corinne Bailey Ray, where are you? If you
Yes.
ever see this on YouTube, Corinne Bailey Ray, holler at us.
You know, she had a little bit of
She did. She had
Yeah.
a nice little run there.
yeah. But she
Um,
also had a little bit of
Some
trauma.
issues. That's
you
true.
know,
There was
yeah.
some death
Her
and some.
husband-
Yeah, that's right. I
so,
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Healing.
Healing time.
That's right. Corinne Ray, I apologize for my hastiness
Yeah.
in asking for some new music.
Yeah.
I got a side note. I got a side note bonus question.
Side note.
Kendrick Lamar.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you saw his Grammy performance.
Yes.
As a scholar,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is Black History Month,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess this is the obligatory Black History Month question.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about his performance? There's been a lot of controversy.
Has
It's fortunately.
Really?
Yeah, not a lot. Not as much as Beyonce's Formation.
Yeah.
Hasn't been as many think pieces about that.
Yeah.
But there has been some talk about Kendricks taking the Grammys as using the Grammys as that particular stage to talk about some of the issues that are happening in the Black community. What are your thoughts on that performance?
I thought it was good.
Yeah, like no big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too. I
Yeah.
just wanted to.
I thought it was good. I thought it was well crafted, and you know, it sent a message while entertaining people.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are other questions to ask about all of this, right? Including the Beyonce as well. So I mean, I'm glad that it's those two songs and videos are opening up conversations and spaces for people to talk about some of the issues.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, here's our last question. All right, our last bonus question. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would that person be?
Oh, wow. See, that's difficult. Well, it's not difficult. It's actually easy. I've been saying this for most of my life, at least since I was a teenager. David Bowie, but he just passed away. So, so he was one of my sort of musical influences. And as I got older and listened to more of his music and also saw the way he operated as an artist, I really appreciated that he was very careful to recognize and honor Black music and its contributions and the way in which it allowed him to pull from as an artist and grow. So I think that's one of the things that I really appreciated about him. And just great music.
Yeah.
It's really great music.
I think David Bowie's, we saw it after he passed away, but I think he's one of the more underrated great musicians of our time. I mean, his ability to really, how people talk like Madonna was able to go from one genre and continue to, he was one of those artists that, clearly predated her, that was able to really move
Absolutely.
into any genre, was able to really reinvent himself,
over and over and over.
Yeah.
Even as a commodity, right? That's traded, right? So when David Bowie became stock, right, on the market,
Right.
that was also a really interesting move as well. And I think a political commentary as well, right? In terms of converting himself into a commodity to be traded on the stock market was
Right.
genius. So, and I've actually used that to teach in some of my classes as well. That idea about how artists sort of contribute to political discourse and what that looks like sometimes. So just as Prince and his whole sign and the implications for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.